Hello everyone, Jed here, and welcome to our 12th, one more Warlord Legends, which we didn't realise we were going to be getting, though some people did kind of call it earlier, thinking that we would get this one. But anyway, as always guys, this is a sort of new format to me, so please give feedback. But today we are going to talk about Let's Talk Three Kingdoms Warlord Legends Zhuo. There he is, the man himself. As always, the big disclaimer, guys. I'm checking my screen to check I'm actually recording, by the way. So, I am not CA staff. Everything I am saying could be complete and utter rubbish. This is all this is all talking about the game before it's out, so everything could be changed. And, so basically, everything I'm saying could be complete and utter rubbish. So, read into yourself, have a look at it all yourself. So, what do we know about Zhuo? So, anyway, his nickname is the Tyrant, and he is a Vanguard. Vanguards are designed to go smashy, charge into, I can't believe I just said that, but I will leave it anyway. So, he's designed to go into enemy units and disrupt them. He's not necessarily good in a straight-up fight, but yeah, so that's who he is. Sorry, muted a second there because I was coughing. So, who is he? Despite his reputation, Zhuo was a chivalrous youth with a talent for horseback archery who spent his early years travelling the Qiang region and befriending many great men of valour. I do apologise for the pop-up. As an adult, he returned to his birthplace of Longzi Commandery and took up farming, inadvertently discovering a blade bearing the inscription, "Slices through jade, like so much logging." That the scholar Seiyong claimed was the blade of the Qin dynasty warlord Xiangyu. After a very successful period in the service of the Imperial Guard that included several promotions, Zhuo was sent off to snuff out the Yellow Turban Rebellion, but was ultimately defeated and demoted. The Liang Province Rebellion saw Zhuo reinstated and sent to suppress the rebels, and while he failed to defeat them, his unit was the only one to escape unscathed, thanks to a cunning deception involving damming a nearby river. I don't know what that was, but Zhuo was subsequently promoted to General of the Vanguard and Inspector of Bing Province. He refused to take up his new post as he didn't want to leave his forces back in Liang Province. With the power of the Han Dynasty waning, he settled in Liang Province to build up his own. With Sun Jian's suggestion that Dongzhu's arrogance and insubordination was worthy of a death sentence, going unheeded. So I think that means, I'll build up his own power. That's what it's really referring to. It's a little confused there. Following the death of Emperor Ling of the Han, He Jin ordered Zhuo to lead troops into Liaoyang in order to eliminate the 10 attendants. However, the latter assassinated He Jin before Zhuo arrived, with the capital falling into turmoil as a result. The 10 attendants took the child Emperor Shao hostage and fled Liaoyang, only to be intercepted by Zhuo, who returned the young emperor to the palace. Taking advantage of the ongoing chaos in the capital to offset his lack of popularity as a potential regent, Zhuo took command of the He family's leaderless forces and soon established himself as a tyrant, ruling through fear and intimidation. So that's a little bit about his playstyle. That CA is doing a series of comics, which will, I dare say more. Doesn't really cover the early it's not going to from what we've seen. I am also listening to a podcast. I will link it down below. It's very good. Certainly the first 20 or so episodes. It does sound like quite a lot of listening, to be fair it is. really sets the scene and gives you a lot more background. It's not heavy, it's really well done. I will link it down below. It's just called the Three Kingdoms podcast, so you can just Google that. I really recommend it if you do want to get into the history. And certainly it really sets the scene much more about how this all happened, like Dongzhou going and executing the attendants and the whole situation beforehand, and how they'd got into power and how he was in power. We will come back to this later, because some of the stuff we discuss later on, it also goes into more depth, so I'll understand more of what's going on and why it's happening. Anyway, playstyle. Dongzhou is trying to hold on to the last remnants of Han imperial power, but as his fist grips tighter and tighter, opposition from outside grows. It is this balance that is the cornerstone of Dongzhou's playstyle. Will you try and rule with an iron fist, or stabilize your realm internally by creating external enemies? Or will you try to, at least in appearance, be gentler and make your enemies turn against each other? Crucially, Dongzhou starts with the Han Emperor, Emperor Xian, under his control. And you might notice that's not the same name as up here, guys, because Shu, the Emperor Shao, who he initially saves, wasn't as close. Xian was related to him in some respect, and younger, so probably more malleable. So Dongzhou basically kills off. He doesn't kill off. He promotes the other son to be, or the adopted son, I believe, to be the emperor and to rule through him, and hides away the other emperor, who later ends up killing himself because he's about to be killed. Well, he's forced to be killed and chooses to kill himself, I believe. So again, whole interesting bit of backstory there if you were wondering why the change in name there, and that is why. Anyway, back to where we were. This means that the still mighty Han Empire is his vassal, which provides him with significant income, and also means he can annex and integrate Han Empire territory by claiming ownership for himself, something that all factions are able to do if they control the emperor. Dongzhou also starts with a higher faction rank than all other playable factions. Dongzhou has access to a unique resource, intimidation. This measure of his authority, exercised through his iron fist and his cruelty, and the amount of control he exerts over his territory and subjects. This measures his authority, I misread that. High intimidation keeps characters under Dongzhou in line, with increased satisfaction, and reduces corruption across his realm. Which is key in the later stages of a campaign. Conversely, low intimidation means less satisfaction and higher corruption. Intimidation is increased by annexing or integrating Han Empire territory, winning battles, or executing other characters. Intimidation decreases when characters are promoted, battles are lost, as well as decaying over time. Dongzhou can also spend intimidation to coerce other factions into more efficient diplomacy, meaning that with high intimidation you can force other factions into certain deals. But you're also, by taking those actions, winning battles, annexing territory, and executing people, you're also going to be alienating the other factions. So while they may do deals, they'll probably not be happy about it, which I guess is why it's intimidation. Overall, Dongzhou's playstyle revolves around juggling internal control with external threats. Much like the historical Dongzhou himself, you have a lot of power and the ability to make a lot of different things happen, but the reins are slipping away from you, and all the other warlords want a slice of the pie, and there's only one way to know how to maintain the upper hand: rule with intimidation, tyranny, and an iron fist. So that's how he is. It sounds a very interesting playstyle, very different than anybody else. You are very powerful, but it sounds like they've balanced that quite nicely, because you don't control all the Han Empire. A lot of it is vassals, so you can get benefits from them, but at the same time, we'll have to see anyway. He sounds very interesting there. At Guanxi, Dongzhou relies on a handful of strong generals at his command, but also counts a number of faction leaders as his rivals from the start, meaning that diplomacy with them will be difficult. Additionally, thanks to events preceding the campaign, Dongzhou also starts with a reduced diplomatic trustworthiness. Lu Bu, his foster son, who Dongzhou convinced to kill his original foster father, Jiang Yuan, considers him a friend, but he has personal rivalries with Sun Jian, who has been actively fighting against him, Yuan Shao, who led the alliance against him, and Cao Cao, with Dongzhou, who Dongzhou has declared as the prime enemy of the state. That's quite a good call if you listen to the histories. Dongzhou's faction also includes other noteworthy figures such as Zhang Liao, Li Ru, and Gao Si. Starting position. As Dongzhou, time is on your side. If you can consolidate your immediate situation, you'll be in good position for the mid-game. However, the situation is difficult, mostly hinging on your success at stabilising your starting position and preventing the former coalition from reuniting against you. Now, this is something, so before the game starts, there's been a coalition of lords, heroes, who have tried to remove Dongzhou from power and free the emperor. Potentially for their own gains, but, and that's where you stand. So there's actually just been a war, and the empire is, from my understanding at the start of the game, is already, it's already split, which gives us the interesting starting position. Because if you go a bit before, Dongzhou kind of ruled over everybody through the emperor. Anyway, Dongzhou's enemies are primarily to the east. Yuan Shu, Cao Cao, and Yuan Shao. They do sound very similar. They're half-brothers, are all within striking range, and can become a threat early if you are too bold. To the north, there is a lot of the Han Empire territory that you could claim for yourself, but such actions will draw a lot of attention and might make other factions more aggressive towards you. However, it might still be the most efficient strategy to be as aggressive as possible in order to get an early advantage. Equally, you can try remain relatively defensive, consolidating your situation and letting other warlords turn against each other. However, with this strategy, you risk falling behind in the race to establish a strong mid-game. So it sounds like we're talking about the juggling here. You really need to juggle your aggressiveness in consolidating power and pulling everybody in, all the previous Han territory into your empire against annoying the other faction leaders too much and pulling them, or uniting them against you. So our initial dilemma. In each playable Warlords campaign, they will face a unique dilemma after fulfilling certain prerequisite actions. These dilemmas will position the player at a fork in the road, making a pivotal moment in the Warlord story. One of the options available is a choice reflecting what happened in history, and the outcomes will follow events of that period. The other lets you forge a tale of what might have been. Total War is all about giving players freedom to create their own stories in some of the most exciting periods in human history. These initial dilemmas epitomise that spirit. Dongzhou's dilemma primarily concerns his relationship or alienation from Lu Bu. However, it is up to you to decide how best to handle the situation and keep the famous warrior in line. Depending on your choices, it may well turn out that you meet an early demise and end up being succeeded by the culprit himself. So you can get yourself killed and be succeeded by Lu Bu, who is your heir. So I don't know if that means you literally get to play as Lu Bu, which would be quite cool. But we'll have to see how that plays out in game. Unlike other warlords, this outcome is dictated not by a chain of dilemmas and events, each of which depends on the selected game mode. So it's not dictated by a chain of events, but is basically you get different things depending on the game mode. So in remote romance mode, Dongzhou's dilemma chain focuses around Dio Chan, a beautiful serving girl who turned Dongzhou and Lu Bu against each other with their jealousy and eventually led to Dongzhou's death. As Dongzhou, you can influence these events by giving up on Dio Chan in order to gain Lu Bu's approval, or confirming his affection by marrying her, thus leading to a more difficult outcome. So basically, not marrying him to Lu Bu, marrying him to Dongzhou. Basically, she was put as a pawn in between them and made, so Lu Bu fell in love with her and was promised to her, and then she was basically thrown to Dongzhou to try and seduce him as well, to drive that wedge between them. Now, Dio Chan, it's a type of headdress which was worn at the time, and it's also basically it's a phrase which is used for basically it's the way the phrase pretty much suggests she may not have existed. She doesn't exist in the histories. So it's a romanticized story from the sounds of it, of somebody who was put between them. So it's probably other things which did it, which is why we've got the different thing in classic mode. In classic mode, the dilemma chain is based upon personal differences between Dongzhou and Lu Bu, as well as the political seeming of Wang Yu. So, so that's why we've got the two very different storylines there, because this storyline is very much considered to be part of the romance of the Three Kingdoms rather than the actual history, where, it's not believed that Dio Chan existed. In fact, the phrase Dio Chan kind of suggests that she didn't. I'm probably going to get annoyed people in the chat telling me I'm completely wrong there, and please do, I'm more than happy to be corrected. Campaign progression. As with all warlords, Dongzhou's path to victory depends on you. If you opt for a more passive, defensive strategy, the other warlords will eventually turn against each other, meaning Dongzhou will need to strike out in the later stage of his campaign. He will then find himself facing steadily stronger warlords and realms that will have to battle it out with the other warring factions on an equal footing. An aggressive strategy early on will allow for quick expansion, but also result in a lot of opposition from various sides right from the start. Dongzhou will also want to take Han territory whenever and wherever appropriate. Whatever his approach, Dongzhou will want to do his utmost to protect Emperor Xian and make sure he exploits his position and role as tyrant to the fullest. Basically, the Emperor is you're ruling through him, but he's an 8-year-old child, so you don't really have much. He doesn't have much power. What kind of player is Dongzhou for? Dongzhou is the warlord for anyone who's up for the challenge of keeping a crumbling realm together, ruling authority by inciting fear, and for those willing to step into the shoes of a true tyrant. So we've obviously got further reading as always there, guys, and this will be linked as always on my Twitter, so please check it out there. I will also have a link to it in the comments and the description, guys, as well as links to all of my other things. He does sound like a very interesting character. It sounds like to access him, I believe you're going to have to get to Emperor level in the campaign, and have defeated Dongzhou himself as any of the other faction leaders. So, but it does sound like he's going to be a very tricky campaign, which is good, because if he's something you've got to unlock, I do like the idea of him being very hard. And he sounds like, much as it talks about the two options of either being passive or aggressive, I actually think from reading it, you probably want to try and walk the middle ground. So you want to walk that ground in the middle. You want to be a bit have some expansion, but not too much. So you want to walk the tightrope effectively between expanding too much. Basically, you want to not necessarily on side, but keep them at arm's length. Keep the AI factions from attacking you until you're ready, and slowly expand. But as I said, he sounds like a very interesting character to play. As always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you have enjoyed this. Please feel free to pop any comments in the comment section, or jump over to my Discord and say hi. There's a link to my Discord in the comments and description, as well as links to my Twitter, my Patreon, my affiliations with Overclockers and Fanatical Games. And as always, if you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for your time.